Hello, my name is Namheon Ryan Lee, and this is my COGS 101 final project on Does Body Language Have a Significant Effect in Communication? The name of my first article is Body Language in the Brain, Constructing Meaning from Expressive Movement, Frontiers in Neuroscience, by Tipper, Signorini, and Grafton. The purpose of my first article is to determine how emotions are expressed through body movements. Essentially, the study's goal is to see if the emotional aspects of performances are independent of physical movements, choreography, and visual aspects that can be seen on the surface level. Here are the methods for my first article. 46 neurologically healthy, right-handed individuals were selected as a part of the study. 30 of them were women, and 16 of them were men, and the mean age of the participants were 24.22 years old, and the range of the participants' age was 19 to 55 years old. The performances were choreographed by professional dancers from University of California, Santa Barbara. A total of 8 themes were depicted: happy, hopeful, fearful, in agony, in love, relaxed, ill, and exhausted. These dancers were masked to make sure that participants focused on the body language. Each theme was performed by 2 actors and in 2 different angles to produce a total of 32 videos. Participants then completed an interpretation task to assess their interpretation skills. And with the keyboard, participants selected one of the 4 options that they consider matching the theme of the performance. Then, consistency scores and response times were recorded. So, what were the results for my first article? Participants received a greater transmission of the intended expressive meaning from performance to viewer. Interpretation of movements were done more rapidly with pantomimed sequences. Brain activity was also boosted when dance and pantomimed movements were involved compared to just a resting baseline. Neurologically, Brodmann areas 1 through 18 all showed greater activity with observations of body language. This was more easily depicted by looking at the frontoparietal regions of the temporal occipital and insular cortex and the subcortical regions of amygdala and hippocampus. And based on the consistency scores and response times recorded, data showed that faster information processing and decision making was done with the assistance of body language. The name of my second article is Inferences of Attitudes from Nonverbal Communication in 2 Channels by Meherbian and Ferris. The purpose of the second article is to study and compare the independent effects of facial attitude and vocal cues and how they relate to communication and interactions amongst individuals. In addition, the study aims to discover whether facial attitude or vocal cues are more crucial when they are combinedly expressed. Here are the methods for my second article. 62 female undergraduate students in the University of California participated to fulfill their introductory psychology requirement. 25 assessed the selection of a neutral word, 17 assessed facial and vocal expressions independently, and 20 assessed facial and vocal expressions together. The 25 participants rated a speaker's 15 words in a 9-point scale, with +4 being like very much and -4 being dislike very much. The word maybe was automatically given a rating of 0.28. 3 female speakers recorded the word maybe in a positive, negative, and a neutral tone. Each tone was then recorded twice to make up a total of 18 audio samples. 2 photos of each of 3 facial expressions recorded a positive, negative, and neutral attitude were taken, and both assessed an attitude scale from +3 to -3. Participants were then presented with a combination of vocal tones and facial expressions. Attitude scores of facial and vocal cues were analyzed and combined with a numerical value. So, what were the results for my second article? The +3 to -3 rating was heavily impacted by facial attitude and vocal attitude, meaning both aspects were crucial. However, this also means that facial attitude and vocal attitude does not have significant interaction effects, meaning the two were independent of each other. The +3 to -3 rating was a combined sum of each of these independent effects. Then, since numerical data was used to be conducted in the study, a linear point slope formula was determined to compare the effects of facial attitude and vocal attitude. AT indicates the total attitude score, AF indicates the facial attitude score, and AV indicates the vocal tone score. The actual numerical formula was AT is equal to 1.5 AF plus 1.03 AV. As you can see in this equation, because of the higher coefficient in AF compared to AV, this indicates that facial attitude matters far more than vocal attitude. And even though facial attitude and vocal attitude may have a slightly different magnitude of overall attitude, it does look like a generally positive expression in the facial attitude and or vocal attitude correlates to a higher rating, indicating a more positive response. The opposite applies for the vice versa. This is the purpose of my hypothetical research. The purpose of my hypothetical research is to determine if the brain emotionally reacts when vocal tones, facial expressions, and physical expressions of the body are combined. Also, it seeks to find which aspect of the three contribute the most to the brain's reactions. So, what were the methods of my hypothetical research? 51 individuals within the age of 18 to 45 were chosen to make sure that the participants have properly functioning brains without any medical conditions in the brain region. 3 groups of 17 people were exposed to all vocal tones, physical expressions and facial attitudes in a 60-minute conversation of a set of random topics. Each type of topics were expressed in a positive, neutral, and a negative way. 17, meaning one group, was exposed to more positive vocal tones than the other 2. 17, which means another group, or the second group, were exposed to positive facial attitudes more than the other 2. And 17, which is the final and the third group, were exposed to positive physical expressions more than the other 2. And each of the groups of 17 individuals rated on a 1 to 10 scale on how they felt about the conversation, with 1 being happy and content with the conversation, and 1 being unhappy and undelightful with the conversation, and 10 being happy and content with the conversation. Then, the average rating of these results of the 3 groups were compared, and since the emphasis of the research was primarily on positive aspects, the sector with the highest average rating shows the biggest impact of the 3. So, what were the results for my hypothetical research? The 17 participants, the first group, who received more positive vocal tones averaged a 7.1 rating. The 17 participants, which is the second group, who received more positive facial expressions, averaged a 7.7 rating. The third and the final group of 17 participants who received a more positive body language or physical expressions averaged an 8.5 rating. Because participants with the highest average rating was the body language group, and body language has the most impact on this means that body language has the most impact on communication between individuals compared to facial expressions and vocal tones. Even so, this still means that all three aspects of vocal tones, facial expressions, and body language had an impact on the participants' average rating, and not a single one of them are considered unimportant. Here are my APA citations of this one is the first article and this one's for the second article. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation.